All right, attention citizens. Prepare for mastering information from Mr. Mike Wells of Mike Wells Mastering. So today you are just supposed to ask questions, and it's easy to do and free. And there's also some beverages over here on the house, some free beer. Let's see that. Good on you. Great. I can't wait to have one. Hopefully it lasts till 5. That's what I've told myself I'll allow it. So, Mike's nice enough to donate his time here to talk to us about stuff that he's smarter than we are about. And he happens to be a very dangerous guy. He's got a lot of dangerous gear over there. Maybe you want to just sort of tell him what you have first, and then we can get into all the nitty-gritty of mastering mayhem and dispelling myths and whatever you want to address.
Sure. Well, I mean, I will say, this is a funny story. I'll tell you the story of meeting Bob, which is actually a really good story. So,
Bob's the president.
Yeah. I mean, Chris Muth is very much known as a legend in the mastering world, you know, from his work at Sterling Sound and all of the custom consoles that he built back when we didn't have commercial consoles on the market. They didn't exist. There wasn't such a thing. If you wanted a professional transfer console, you had to hire someone like Chris, and you had to have a spare $150,000 lying around, and then you had to be able to get his time. You know, so here are all these factors that make things basically impossible, you know, as a small studio owner. And I had started, I'd moved into mastering from mixing about 5 years prior to the Dangerous console coming on the market. So I had built what I called Frankenstein out of a number of other, you know, products on the market, and then making a number of things like AV, you know, gain structure kind of things to do level matching and stuff like that. But it was far from a professional console, hence why I called it Frankenstein. But I went to an AES, and Dangerous had launched this mastering console, and I'm at the booth, and I see this guy, and I say, "What's this?" And I look down at his badge, and it says Chris Muth. And so I just, and I'm like, "What's this?" I'm like shaking, and he's like, and you know, Chris, he's a very animated, enthusiastic guy. So he's giving me a rundown of this thing. I think I was listening to about 5% of it, and then I was just kind of starstruck, dumbfounded by the other 95%. But then I had him run through it again, and he showed me everything, and I asked him the price, and he told me, and I mean, take a zero off of 150,000, you know, and that's what we were talking about. And it's like, my God, this thing's affordable. So that night at Hyde Street, where my studio was for about a decade and a half, I'm with David Marquette, and I'm pouring beers because I was on beer duty for the party we were having. And Marquette's there, and he's got this guy next to him, and David says, "So what's the coolest thing you saw on the floor today?" And I said, "Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. I met Chris Muth today, man. Holy shit, they have a commercially available mastering console from this company, Dangerous." "What, man, are you serious? Have you seen this thing? Is this amazing?" This guy standing next to David's like, and he's smiling.
And that's Bob.
And that's Bob. And David says, "Let me introduce you to the president of the company."
And what you have to understand about Bob is he doesn't have any kids.
Yeah.
These are his kids.
Exactly.
So
these are his kids.
If you say something good, that's very good. Say something bad, you're going down.
Right. Yes. Bob's a very to the point. Like curt is a nice word for Bob. But I will say one of the things, and we've become really good friends over the years, and one of the things that's been awesome about that is he told me, he said, "One of the things I always knew about you, Mike, was that you were never bullshitting me because of the way I met him. I didn't know who he was. I'm sitting here talking about his company and what they made. I didn't know this guy from a hole in the wall, and he's hearing the level of enthusiasm I had about the product." So, you know, he and I met that night, obviously, and we became very good friends after that. But I've stayed with the product line. I've been a beta tester for some of the units. I've had input on some of the units. Chris, I've gotten to know Chris over the years and become friends with Chris. I mean, an honor. These guys, they come from such a history. You know, Chris's history is just, you know, this is legendary stuff. And, you know, the knowledge that he brings to the table, specifically to the mastering world, you don't have that anywhere else. I mean, you have great engineers, you have people with great ideas at other companies, but what you don't have is a technician who has built custom equipment for the mastering market for decades. And I think that stands in the designs. I think that shows in the power of the designs of the products they brought to market.
Yeah, if you go to wherever Sterling's ended up mastering, you'll still see the Muth consoles that he built for those guys, for example. And he was just at Chris Athens' place out in Austin, if you know him, the mastering engineer, rebuilding his lathe for him. That's the kind of stuff he likes to do recreationally. It's fun.
He likes to nerd out. He's good at it.
And he has a very acerbic wit.
Kurt.
Right on. So that's how you guys. So the first piece of gear you got was the master. Was that?
It was the full transfer console, the MQ, the monitor, and the master. I have all three.
That's right. That's right. I remember seeing pictures of it from the
Still
first
using them.
press
Still use the
purchases,
MQ.
Right? Yep, of course. So all right. So you've got those three pieces, and then what else do you use from Dangerous?
I have I have what I think is kind of a one of a kind in the mastering world, because I fell into the theatrical trailer world as, by way of, I kind of found myself in the world of doing music libraries. Just after I moved to LA, I just kind of connected with some of these guys, and the content library business is a booming business. Music libraries, that's a booming business. And so through them, I started meeting some theatrical trailer folks. And in the theatrical trailer world, they work with stems, and they also work with stereo mixes that go to mastering. And one of the challenges they have is a lot of theatrical trailer guys are like, well, we like this stem, we like this stem, we want to make a trailer out of that, but what's actually mastered is the stereo trailer itself. I've been slowly moving into stem mastering because I've had demands for it, despite the
debates.
I will be curt myself and say, I don't need stems to remix your track. I need an MS encoder and an EQ, and I can remix your track. So, with that said, stems is not a remixing operation. It can be, but it can also be very purpose-driven, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I have 4 Convert 8s. I have 2 2-bus pluses that sum into a 2-bus. So that's pure insanity in the mastering world. But the reason I do that is, like I said, some of these film houses I've ended up doing the analog stem world that I can offer them. The trailers are huge. And if you think about a film experience, we all know what it's like to sit through 7 trailers before the movie begins. It's punishing, man. Those trailers are mastered like hip-hop records, man. I mean, the things hit.
One man against the world in his underpants.
Again. This time he's pissed.
He was wronged.
Again. But the music underneath the trailers is pretty heavily limited. But the result of these guys are competing for your attention. Theatrical trailers are competing for your attention. You've paid to see the movie. What they want you to do is pay to see the movie that they're giving you a preview of. So believe it or not, quality sound really matters in a theatrical trailer. So loudness matters, but also you're in a dedicated listening environment. They have your attention. So the fidelity of a trailer actually really matters. So yes, there are LUFS standards that we're abiding by. It's loud now. However, everything is going through digital. It's boxed, it's slammed, it's forward, it's aggressive, it's painful. You've experienced it. Doing these stem trailers that I'm doing for some of these guys, we're doing it. I'm stemmed out, 8 stereo pairs. I'm going through different analog components. I'm summing it to stereo. I'm doing a stereo master from there. If they call me and they say, we love this, but we want a version with just the strings and with the percussion and the sound effects, I've got recall. I can do that. I can give them what they want. The sound of these trailers is huge. Blade Runner 2049, John Wick 2, those theatrical trailers, they stick out. I mean, if you can still catch one of those theatrical trailers. but when you were in the theater seeing Die Hard 45 and you saw that trailer, you noticed how big it sounded. But yes, I use a lot of converters. I do a lot of stem work. I use the DA, Convert DA2. I use the AD Plus. Converters mean a lot to me. I was a multi-channel guy. I've always been a multi-channel guy. I was a big Lavery guy. I was always die-hard Lavery user. The converts came out. I was sold. I picked them up. I sold my Laverys. I'm sold.
Good story. Do you want to get into any other stem mastering nonsense, or you're feeling like you let that sleeping dog lie?
Shall we wait for internet Q&A to bash it?
we could launch into Q&A right now.
Does anyone have any burning thoughts about stem mastering they'd like to discuss?
Anybody? Do you know what stem mastering is? What he's talking about? Okay, cool. Yeah.
We can talk about other things.
I don't know if you've seen the video. He put it together a 3-part video. It's pretty awesome. It walks you through the process. You get to hear it before, after, during. I use that when I train the folks at Sweetwater. I'll play a couple clips from that to sort of, hip them out. Yeah, it's on YouTube. Yeah, it's really, really good. Just listen with some good speakers, obviously. Listen to a good system.
I mean, in essence, without going back into the video, the way I approach it is, again, a lot of mastering is solving problems. That's kind of what mastering was. It was a QA, QC, final touch and polish, solving any problems before we got out into the commercial market. Stem mastering can basically be, when you take the remix argument off the table and you look at it for what it is a further level of enhancement, correction, and final polish. When I take a heavy rock mix and they want it really pushed, distorted guitars, any kind of sound effects that are going along with it, any kind of synthesis, and then rock, crunchy drums, you get all those three things together, man. You want it loud, you want it punchy. That can be a really big challenge. But if we can separate those things out, we can do a little bit of work to get a huge result difference. Love electric guitar that loud. Yes.
High res. 2496.
Having more control, correct?
Yes.
Just having more wide control.
Correct.
Of
More
the
control.
overall.
I love this song. It's my favorite song of all time. It's high res. Oh, and this show, without. If only it was mastered in stems, though. Because I'm not, could have been better,
Do you find your approach with stems and not stems, is it the same? Whereas say you start listening for the bass, and then is there a process, and is it the same whether it's stems or not? Like, do you try to find the bass first, the mids, then?
It's a great question. I do say this in the Sweetwater video, and it's funny because the comments that I've seen in the YouTube video around this are very interesting. We master the stereo file first. I always do that first. You know why? Because that avoids this whole remixing argument. And the reason why is because 99% of the time, we're going to go with stereo. I have a lot of people that are interested in stems, and I always say, let's start with the stereo mix. If we can get you where you want to be with stereo, well then A, we've saved a lot of money, and we've saved a lot of time, you get what you need. It's not that it's a necessity. With the film guys that I do work with, that's a necessity. They need the mastered stems for their product. That's different. In the music world, we'll start with a stereo mix, we'll master it, and we'll see what is going on here that you're not happy with, and what can we change. If I'm working with the mixer directly, maybe we change it in the mix, we're done. But if, let's say it's a home recording and they're not really able to achieve what they want, or also they have the mixed stems but the mixer's on vacation, that's happened, or a variety of things. So we'll take buying that guy dinner.
It's my library.
Nice. But we'll
That's
take
high
the
res
stems.
too.
I am a huge ZZ Top fan. That was my first concert.
Oh, do you
Love
have the
those
new
guys.
one?
A new favorite.
Do you have the new record?
They have a new record?
Billy Gibbons has one, just solo
This
record.
Mescalero was the last ZZ
Yeah,
Top record.
I think so.
Saw that tour. It
Billy
was
Gibbons
amazing.
got a new one. I've got it in high res.
Wow, right in high res?
Yeah.
There, over there? Man, I have a Billy Bow from Gretsch. I got one of those Billy Bows when it came out from Gretsch.
Okay, that's awesome.
Dude, it's an amazing piece. They didn't make many of them. But what will happen is we'll do the stereo master, and we'll see what is it that we're not getting that they really wish they could get. 9 times out of 10, it's something to deal with the drums and the bass, or the drums and the guitars. It's always a drums interaction with something else, and it's typically low frequencies. Like, we lose the snap of the snare with limiting, and we're bringing too much bloom up in this whole 120 to 200 area, because that's what's going to bloom up. So it's that kind of stuff where we'll end up doing minor EQ cuts in like drums, and maybe shaping bass a touch to do that. But I'm talking about 1 dB moves, and that's what mastering is in an EQ world, 1 dB moves. So these aren't huge differences. What I'm usually doing in the stem world to get the huge benefits is, I did a rap record recently with Darren Vegas, and the artist was called Empress Kush. Phenomenal stuff, and everyone knows Derek from his work, legendary rap producer down here in LA. And so The artist wanted to try out stems. He was not really sold on it. Let me try one. So we did one track. She's got this beautiful, airy kind of background vocal in the chorus. She's got this really big bass line happening. She's got 808 drums, and then there's the synth line happening, right? And then obviously her rapping over it. So here we're just doing a purely enhancive thing. I've got the bass line going through a set of API 55Ms, 550Ms, not the 5500. And Chris actually tweaked those out. They're really awesome. We've got it set at 0, but I'm just using the transformers that Chris tweaked out for me. That's it. It's flat. This background ethereal vocal, it was going through the Verimune flat, because the tubes of those are really nice for spreading things out. That's actually one of my favorite parts about that box. We've got the main vocal was going through, I can't remember, some compressor, again, just to touch it, and then the drums were just going straight. Then from stereo, we're going back EQ, dangerous compressor. We made that thing so big because what I was able to accomplish from the vocal going through the Verimune and from the bass going through the transformer, I would never be able to use a tube box on a hip-hop track. But the vocal benefited so much from those tubes that they weren't doing in the studio. It was plugins in the studio with just a straight mic pre. It was huge. Darren heard it and he's like, okay, we're doing the rest of the record in stems. So, but that's no EQ, that's no corrective action. That's just, we're leveraging different boxes for what they're good at. Summit, everything's flat, then we're doing a stereo master. So there is no remix. It's just, I have a huge toolkit. When I'm doing records with stems, what we're doing is we're leveraging tonality, and we're leveraging a purchase that I made. That's a purchase that someone else doesn't have the ability to make, or they, like a great example is a lot of mixers really love to put their favorite plugin on the bus because they just really like the way it sounds. And I'm having this conversation a lot more with people. Well, I have the API 2500 plugin from UA. Well, I'll tell you what, it ain't going to beat my API 2500. Can you just take it off the bus? Give me a version with and without so I know what you're doing. Then I'll put my API on it and it's going to sound badass. I know you have the C2 plugin, but can you take it off and let me use my C2? Stuff like that. I mean, I get what they're going for, but nothing's ever going to beat the real thing. So but it's a collaboration. And I found mixers want the record to sound badass. Everyone wants his record to sound badass. Yeah, we've all heard stories about this conflict between mixing and mastering engineers, but you heard Michael and I talking before. It is really just all about relationships, and you build friendships with people. Everyone's working together. So, there are still a lot of urban myths out there about mastering this, mixing that, blah, 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 mix compression this, mix compression that. We're all working together. The goal is to make a great record. If everyone starts speaking the same language, we can always get there. And I know I kept going. You were going to ask me a question.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Sorry about that. No, I had a question. So you just touched on how you'd prefer the API be out before it got to you because it's not going to sound as good as you. As a mixer or as a mastering engineer, what would you say to the mixer bringing you something to master? Is it across the board? I don't want to hear your EQ on the main bus. I just want to hear no EQ, no compression. Just give me what you mixed. Then I do the rest, or how does that collaboration come into play?
Sure. Well, first off, I want to hear what they like.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. So I never have, and I don't have like, you're doing something wrong. I don't have that attitude towards anyone, and anyone that works with me knows that. It's my outlook. I always say this, I have a your record outlook. I find in mastering there's really two camps. There's the my sound, my thing, and there's the your record camp. The guys with my sound and my thing, well, you're hiring me for my thing. And the guys that are in the your record camp like myself, I'm interested in what you want. I have a huge set of tools, and the reason I have all those tools is because different tools give different results because I'm interested in what you want. So let's talk about your record, and I'm here to facilitate your vision. The number one challenge we run into with mixed bus compression is time constants. So if I need to put an additional compressor on the mix, and the mix already has a 2-bus compressor on it, the ability for me to line up those time constants so there isn't a compression artifact is practically impossible. It's practically it's impossible, which is why if you're loving this API plugin and it's really giving you the glue, awesome. Give me that version with that on it so I know what you want. I know what the artist is hearing. I know it's kicking ass. But if I do it again, or if I do anything else, I will never be able to line up those time constants. I have to look more into like limiting, parallel limiting, other ways to get loudness without having the trade-offs of time constant artifacts. So I always do mix reviews for everybody. That's always a win-win. I worked on an EDM record about, 6-7 months ago. The guy says, will you do a review of this? Of course. So he gives it to me and I'm listening to it and I said, okay, dude, you're doing a drum bus. There's a compressor on the drum bus. I can hear it. Your kick drum's flapping. You're going through another compressor here. Clearly the mix is going through this. All these time constants aren't lining up. Can you do this, take this off, take this off? He calls me. He's like, how the hell did you hear all that?
That's my job.
Well, not only that, but I was a mixing engineer before I was a mastering engineer. I mean, I'm a mastering engineer. I have one of my best friends has a 16-year-old girl. She's awesome. I heard her on the phone. She just started making music. I heard her on the phone with one of her friends. Well, yeah, I'm putting my first single out, but I haven't mastered it yet. I'm looking at my friend. Did I just hear it? And she's like, I haven't told her what you do. But she doesn't know what mastering is. YouTube tells the world what it is, but my point is, you see a lot of people coming into the world of mastering without ever really having any background in mixing or tracking. So, yeah, I came from tracking, I came from mixing, I moved into mastering. So, yes, when I'm hearing something to listen to work with someone, I'm working backwards. I'm listening for what's going on so that everyone's going to get a better result. So when I talked to this guy, yeah, he was like, how the hell did you hear that? I said, well, I heard it, but can you just take this stuff off and we'll try it again? So he does it, he gives it to me, and then I give him something back to start with, and he's like, yeah, now the kick is killing. I'm like, because I'm not fighting your compressor, and I'm not fighting it 2 levels down. He had a drum bus with a compressor on it, then he was doing a stereo compressor on the mix. So I'm fighting 2 levels down, and we worked backwards, took that stuff off, and then we did stems. We did a drum stem in stereo, we did the rest of it in stereo. It was killing, he loved it. So that's collaboration. It took us like a week to get to where we're mastering, but again, you're talking about the goal of the record. There's no goal of my ego if that's my thing. Sorry, dude. That kind of thing.
Right, because you're trying to translate the artist's dream. That's the ultimate thing. So the better it sounds, the better it's going to translate.
Hey, man, I get more work off of great sounding records. I get more clients out of a great review, from one mixer to another mixer. The more positive you are in your career, the more it's going to benefit you, period. That's been my experience, and it continues to be my experience.
Well, that's not a good place to stop.
Q&A?
You guys had enough? We have more questions.
Stems?
Let's start that again. One more, yeah.
So, you said that you came from a mixing aspect, or you started as a mixer and then you became a mastering. How would a mixer decide, or what was it that made you listen to something and said, I want to be a mastering engineer? What would you look for? Like, say, if you had a student, you'd say, look for this. If this doesn't fit you, if this is not what you like, then just stay the mixing. But these are the key things that got me there, that made me from mixing to mastering.
I do feel that it makes a lot of sense. Man, my voice is thrashed.
Trade show voice.
Yeah, I do feel that it makes a lot of sense. Your career benefits from starting with mixing, recording as well if you can, because you're going to learn how the elements all fit together. You learn how, again, like meshing drums together and balancing guitars and all that stuff. I really think you learn a lot from that process, that when you're just starting off in mastering, it's kind of, if I start there, it's like, well, what are you doing? And it's not to say you're not going to do well. It's not to say that you're not going to kick ass. I can't say there's a right way and a wrong way. What got me into mastering is something that really doesn't exist anymore. I was very technical minded. I did a lot of tape machine work and stuff like that. And back then in the 90s, QA, QC, assembling, creating a master, making a PMCD, working with the Sony 1630, that was difficult shit. and it was not audio. This is all back-end assembly, data, file management, looking at codes, making sure there's no, C1, C2, C3 errors on a PMCD, looking for the error on the DAP machine, transferring the PCM 1630s. This is boring shit, man. But if you're really technically minded, you're into it. So I was really into that, PQ editing on a 1630. You don't have to do that shit anymore. You're hardly making CDs anymore. And not to mention, manufacturing houses really don't even need a DDP anymore. So what really got me into it was the audio and the mystery of it, because yes, back in the 90s, if you were going to professional mastering house, you weren't really allowed to ask any questions, and quite frankly, I thought that was kind of fucked up, so I really wanted to know what was going on, but it was kind of the vibe back then. No, don't ask me any questions. I don't have any issues. You want to ask me a question, I'll tell you how I do it. And I think that's kind of how the vibe is now. People are willing to discuss their techniques. Obviously, the internet has a lot of thoughts on that too, but if you feel like you're really technically minded, if you feel like you're really nerdy in that way, jump in. But you can also really be nerdy in a mix way. So I do think there's a lot of value in starting and mixing, starting and mastering. Like I said, you can certainly do it. But, again, like what really got me started isn't something that even really exists today. Yeah, does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, you bet.
Right on. Well, thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
I always learn something every time I talk to you, so I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, is that good or bad?
Thanks, man.